You know how I told you that at the Goodwood Festival of Speed we were going to be finding out about at least one future Shmeemobile, a new addition to the collection? Will you join me after hours? Everything is kind of calming down for the evening because I've been keeping a secret we're about to be taking a look at. Now, this is the hill climb that I have ridden up on many occasions over the years. In fact, in many cars that have come out of the gates of Maranello in Italy. And right now we are here at Casa Ferrari, the Ferrari hospitality, because inside is a car that up to this point, I've not even previously seen. You're gonna join me for a first look at the future edition, one of these. The 12 Cilindri. Yes, after talking for so many years about the 812 Superfast and the 812 GTS, cars that you know I love, naturally aspirated V12s, the Super GTs, I never bit the bullet. Arguably I should have done, but now there is the new car, the new tribute to the 12-cylinder, the 12 Cilindri, and you know it. It's joining the collection at long last. A Ferrari Super GT V12 is happening. Let's head on in. I want to tell you a little bit about when it's going to be here, about the specification ideas that I'm thinking, and about so much more as we take a first look together. Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello, and welcome back to the channel, where I'm delighted to say that joining the collection is the new Ferrari 12 Cilindri. This is it then. We're here after everyone has gone home, and this is my first opportunity to take a look at 12 Cilindri. This is the Spider with the folding retractable hardtop, and I've got to say, in person, this car is stunning. Now, I know there are a lot of design details that people have spoken about, and in fact, everybody I had talked to who has seen this before, who either went to the original launch, the global debut in Miami during the Formula One Grand Prix, or who went to one of the customer launch events in Maranello afterwards, all said the same thing, that you have to see it in person, because when you do, it looks amazing. There are some big design details that have drawn a lot of attention. For example, the gloss black stripe that runs around the front, which is actually a heritage detail, which we'll talk more about in a moment. But combine that with what this truly is. You know, when you think of Ferrari and V12s, this is the next in that line, the follow-on from the F12 and the 812, and a lot of people thought the final derivatives of the 812, the Competizione and the Competizione Aperta, were going to be the end of 12-cylinder Ferrari GT cars. But I had faith that wasn't going to be the case. I had an inkling that the next one would continue this story, and while I'm lucky to have some amazing Ferraris in my collection, the SF90 Stradale, the 296 GTS, and the Purosangue, which shares this V12 engine, of course, this is one that I have spoken about for so long. Having a V12 GT, I love my road trips, I love grand touring. This is that car. This is 12 Cilindri, and I want to take you all around this. We'll take a look inside, we'll open up the bonnet and talk about the engine, we'll pop the roof down as well. I think I'm able to do that a little bit later, and tell you more about mine. This is one, I've got to say, standing here, this thing is breathtaking. Let's look at it a little bit more closely. I think because we didn't see it yet, let's head to the back of the car. This particular car is in Verde Volterra, by the way. It's one of the launch colours, as I said, you've seen on the 12 Cilindri. There's a lot to discuss about the design, particularly back here on the rear deck. And of course, as I mentioned, this being the convertible, the implications of that and what I'm going to be choosing as well. Inside, familiar two-seat layout, rear driven, of course, but some big upgrades. We'll start with the engine, effectively taking the power plant from the 812 Competizione, so the 6.5 litre V12 that revs, get this, to 9,500 RPM, producing 830 horsepower, naturally aspirated, no hybrid, no twin turbos, and 678 Newton meters of torque. One of the differences, though, is the engine now, unlike the 812, has the newer 8-speed dual clutch transmission, so 5% shorter ratios, which means revving even faster, sounding even more epic. Of course, a new car means it will have the OPF, but I think we're still going to be able to enjoy the soundtrack that this offers. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, 62 miles an hour, 2.9 seconds. 0 to 200 kilometers an hour, that's 124 miles an hour, is only 7.8 seconds. Top speed, 300 plus kilometers an hour, 211 miles an hour, in fact, when you're up at the top end. This car is going to be insane to drive. The front clam, this entire massive hood bonnet, actually pivots forwards like on the Purosangue. I'll show you that in a moment. But the big thing about the design, if we touch on that for a moment, is this front end. We'll need to talk about the name as well, but we'll get to that. This design, which is actually inspired by the 365 GTB4, the car that many of us know as the Daytona, because that was how it was coined by the media after the 1-2-3 finish that Ferrari had at Daytona back at the time. The idea here, and Flavio Manzone, the boss of Centro Stile, has said you can only have this gloss black, is to bring this design through, have this horizontal look around the front, and you can see that as well with the way the light blade wraps around the edge here beneath the eyes of the car. Of course, against the Verde Volterra, we have the exposed carbon fiber here, lots of openings at the front for all of your cooling, and of course your ADAS systems, adaptive sensors and different devices like that, which I very much like to spec, given how I love to drive the cars. Come round towards the side though, you've got the aero devices here to keep the design fairly clean in terms of its appearance, but of course assist with reducing the swelling air that you have in the wheel wells. And this, which I believe is the standard wheel design, I actually really like. It's a fairly simple design. 5 single spokes, but looks amazing, suits it really, really well. So you've got this classical elegance in the design of the car, but then you've also got some clever aero and things afoot as well. So come back here and you can spot the gurneys, and both the Coupe and the Spider have this. Of course, the lip spoiler back there. But what you might not realize initially is that this panel back here above the tail lights is actually active aero. This pivots forwards on either side. It's quite a strange system to obviously keep the car more planted at higher speeds. It's something quite unusual and I think fairly unique to this particular car to do that, but Ferrari always love on their cars to keep them simple and elegant in design and to integrate things like the aero quite cleanly. Now, it's finished back here in gloss black to match the front, and always is. On the Coupe, you have a boomerang effectively that runs over the top, with the rear window very heavily tinted to blend into that gloss black, which I actually think looks really smart once you start to take it in and look at it a little bit more closely. We've then got the tail light that goes all the way across, that horizontal light which kind of accentuates the width of the car overall, and come down a lot more carbon fiber for the diffuser, and the new style of the exhaust tailpipes. The 812 Competizione had very much done that, bringing them out to the side, the benefits of which are that you have more effective use of the diffuser in the center, and I also think obviously they look very good. The quad style sitting beneath the quad tail lights, 2 on each side, to match with all of that as well. To show you inside, pop open the door for a moment, because in here we have the lovely tan leather against the green paintwork and all of the latest Ferrari interior features, like for example the 16-inch curved digital display that I'm very familiar with from all 3 of my other Ferrari cars, and soon to be 4. The controls that you have on the steering wheel, the touch controls, of course no e-Manettino because it is pure combustion engine in here, no turbos, no hybrids. Then the regular Manettino with bumpy road which you can press, and of course the selector for the 8-speed gearbox as well. But lots of other details we'll take a better look at in a moment once we're fully exploring that. For the second, let's open up the front. So down here, to pull the release for the front clam, I'm going to close the door to come and show you, because as I mentioned, this is pivoted from the front, so effectively lifted up from the side, and look at that. 6.5 litre Ferrari V12 engine that sits behind the front axle, front mid, and that is one of my favorite types of cars to drive. The weight distribution and balance that you get from it, near on perfect balance in fact, and just absolutely heavenly. I mean, look at it. Look at the way this is even presented. The bright red, all of the carbon fiber, the chassis number plaque, which I always find fun, is facing in, perhaps you could think, the opposite direction, but of course once it's opened like this, that's how you look at it. And then very little that sits in front of the wheels, aside from cooling and everything that's required, obviously, for mileage out on the road with the car. And that view, once it's opened up, which is fairly spectacular in its own right, no denying it. So take your 800 plus horsepower from this. In fact, only Aston Martin have a more powerful V12, 835, 5 extra horsepower, and that's with the twin turbos, obviously losing some of the soundtrack and the naturally aspirated feel. So this is really quite impressive, especially when you also think about how fast it can rev up, what it sounds like. I'm sure we can't unfortunately hear it today, but I have every bit of confidence that this will sound absolutely insane. Back to the interior then, same door handles as we see on the other Ferrari models. I'm going to take my first ever seat in my future car. So let me step here into Dodici Cilindri. Check this out. So we've got the passenger display over there. We have a new display now in the center. So a new 10.25 inch screen that sits here in the center. So in addition to the display that you have, of course, on the dashboard, currently running on a demonstration mode to show us a little bit of what that looks like. Just taking a look around, we've got the memory seat options. Of course, being the Spider, as I mentioned, you obviously have a different appearance back here. You have the lowerable rear window, but you lose some of the additional cargo space and the ability to get through towards the luggage compartment at the rear. I think I can just wake up the car at the moment, show you some of the other displays. Take a look at that. Passenger display and central screen also running in their demo modes. And of course, in the central tunnel, you now have the controls as well to do the roof and to do the rear window, given that this is the Spider. So let me just demonstrate that. Pull the button. It will open up the rear compartment. It will then fold open the two-piece hardtop roof, tuck that away behind us, and we will talk in a moment as well about the Spider versus Coupe argument and discussion, but easily does it. That's now up, and of course you can then press the windows down if you'd like the look of the car more cleanly presented with all of those, plus your rear window down, which has the default position a bit in the middle. You can lower it ever so slightly, not all the way down. But look at this. I'm just imagining right now, of course, massive, massive bonnet out in front, enormous thing, but very familiar in here for me, having your mirror controls on this side if you'd like to turn off stop start, or heli as it's called. Obviously your light controls on your steering wheel, you have your cruise control selections, your lights down here. I mentioned about the e-Manettino that you don't have on this one, the regular Manettino, and your controls as well for the different screens, your indicators that you can use either way around, and your paddles that are fixed to the column behind. And this design, familiar from the Purosangue in fact, to separate the passenger compartment from the driver compartment, their own air conditioning vents, their own display in the center, the model designation on that lower panel as well, and then the seats that we have here, some storage compartment that you have behind. And I gotta say, I am currently very excited about this one. Very, very excited for what the future looks like doing some miles in Dodici Cilindri. Another thing that I'd like to come and show you in the back of the car that I've noticed, in fact, just to show you the luggage space that you have in the Spider here, is that there's a new personalization specifications plaque. This is something that Ferrari always include on their cars to show you the exact spec of the car as it left the factory, so all of the different options. But they have restyled this, made the top section slightly smaller, which means you can fit more of your options. And as you can see, this car is finished to a very, very high degree, all of the different options that we have fitted on it. And talking options, I will tell you a little bit about what I am thinking for it, but let me just close this back down for a moment, take a look at the car roof down so that you can get a different perspective on it, because I think it has to be said, that looks pretty nice, doesn't it? That looks really like you would imagine for a state-of-the-art flagship Ferrari V12. That is a very, very undoubtedly good-looking thing. And I have to say again, the more that you see this design, the more that you take in the front, the more it makes sense. Let's talk about the name, because I think it's fair to say that Ferrari are definitely the undisputed kings of coming up with bizarre names for their cars. If we think back a little bit, La Ferrari, the Ferrari, even Enzo, Ferrari Enzo, to look at the predecessors of this, F12, the Ferrari with a 12-cylinder, 812, 800 horsepower 12-cylinder. Then we have 12 cylinder, again a 12. So I love that consistency between those three models. I love how they went from F12 to 812 to, you could say, 12C. But it has to be said, if you think about it in English, and if you don't know how you're supposed to pronounce the initial C in Italian, it's a very, very confusing name. Dodici, Italian for 12, Cilindri, cylinder, 12 cylinder. And I love that they do this, even though it's bizarre and doesn't make sense, but I do think that it's a bit confusing, and it's been one of the complicated things for the car, certainly if I was thinking about the marketing angle on it, to try and explain what that means, how it sits. To name a car 12-cylinder, it's almost in some ways like the Maserati Quattroporte, 4-door, but words in Italian sound so nice, sounds so exotic, sounds so exciting, sounds so interesting, and it does that again here. So I don't know if we call it the 12C, if we call it the 12-cylindry, if we call it 12 cilindri, feels right to me to try and pronounce it in Italian, and I apologise that it's not perfect Italian pronunciation. I'm definitely doing the best I can, but it does follow on from that very unusual naming structure. In fact, if you look at all of the different models in the Ferrari lineup, there is very little consistency from one to the next. We're talking Roma Spider. We're talking the F8 Tributo and Spider, the 296 GTS. Again, the numbers don't mean the same thing from one car to the next. We've got Purosangue, thoroughbred, that translates from Italian. We have Daytona SP3, and this is in some ways a Daytona as well, so that's another little confusing head scratch. But you know what? Does it matter if you're firing up a 6.5 litre NAV12? Does that matter anymore? I don't necessarily think it does. So I'll give them a buy on this one when it comes to the name. Something that's been normalized by Ferrari in the last couple of years is to co-launch both the coupes and the convertibles. So they did this when they upgraded from the 488 to the F8. You had the F8 Tributo and the F8 Spider. They did it also last year with the SF90 XX, launching both the XX Stradale and the XX Spider. And they have done it again with 12 cilindri, which means you have this decision from the outset: do you want the coupe or do you want the Spider? Now, I expected, and I think so did many others, that the convertible would be the harder to get, rarer, more limited version, because that's the mindset that we have from history. If it's the 458 Speciale, Speciale A, La Ferrari Aperta, or even the 812 Superfast and the 812 GTS. But I believe, my understanding of it is that the Spider is ever so slightly rarer, but at the end of the day, you can almost order whichever you want. There will be approximately similar numbers. So take that prestige subconscious mindset out of the window and start to think about which car is more suited. So when I first saw the pictures of the coupe, and you have to think about the design, it has a glass roof panel, an electrochromic glass roof, so at the press of the button you can make it tinted or make it more open as a sunroof. You then have the window design at the back for the visibility rearwards, and between you have this almost boomerang that goes over the top of the roof of the car, this design that goes right over. A design that, again, like the front, was a little bit of a talking point at first, and I think because I have filmed on many occasions cars that haven't yet been released and revealed to the world, I got quite used to visualizing what that's actually going to look like. What's it going to be like in person? And when I saw that, I thought that design looked mega. I thought that design looked insane. So from the outset, I was looking at the two and I was thinking, how do they fit into my life? What am I planning to do? And while driving with the roof down and the wind in your hair is amazing, I'm also lucky to own the Roma Spider and the 296 GTS and a number of other convertible cars as well. So take that out of the equation. The design of the coupe, I think, is mega. It's unique to this car. It has a purpose with the glass roof and the rear window, but it also has a unique character for it. Combine that as well with the luggage space. Not that this is bad for the type of car, there's plenty of space back there as well, but the coupe obviously has significantly more. And given I like to go on road trips and adventures and big drives and go away for a while and take a lot of luggage with me, you can start to see how it would make sense that I might opt for that one. So I can say that I have ordered, if you haven't worked it out already, the 12 cilindri, the coupe, not the Spider. Now, if it was a more limited edition car and you're thinking about keeping it in the collection forever, driving it slightly less, that would perhaps change the perspective on this. But for me, it's a car to drive, to use, to own, to enjoy, to share videos of course, and I love the design of the coupe. So standing here, obviously, I'm taking in what the Spider is like, but it's going to be a 12 cilindri coupe that joins the Shmeemobiles. I know you probably want to know about specs. What's it going to be? And I don't want to give the game away completely. It's actually been quite a fun one, this, because never before have I spec'd a car that I haven't seen myself in person, or even at that point got the full options list for, because I did this prior to that being released. I've been going through everything. I have actually already set my spec. I don't want to reveal it all now, but what I will say is that given this is a car that from the very outset is about Ferrari's history, about the heritage style design, but with a modern twist, you can bet that it's going to be something that ties in to that theme. I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm going to go with it. I want to enhance almost this front. It's going to be a light color. It's going to be a different color, a color of a car I've never actually owned to date, which I think is going to be quite fun. That means as a result, also I guess, because I've already popped it in, I could well be in line for a very early car to be delivered. And it's quite crazy for me saying that before the Roma Spider is here and before the SF90 XX Stradale is here, but it could be a case that it even arrives before the end of the year. I don't want to put my hopes too high. It might be early next year, 2025, but it's not going to be long. It's not going to be long at all. And that, to me, is absolutely surreal right now, just trying to process what that little collection of modern Ferraris looks like, the similarities between the cars, but also the differences. And this is the thing, even with it being a Spider or a Coupe, right, is that I'm lucky to have the Roma Spider and the 296 GTS. So it makes sense to mix it up a little bit, to have different experiences, to have different times driving these cars. And it's completely surreal to me. But this is one I have been so excited about. I've been following the journey of this car for years as to what it was going to be. All of the reports of hybrid this or downsized engine that, and always knew in the background what was actually coming from hearing the prototypes driving around, from seeing different clips about them. And I guess kind of working it out, reading between the lines what was going to happen. That's one of the reasons why I held back. And when I actually went to visit an 812 Superfast recently, I even hinted a little bit more towards it. So I've been looking forward to it. I've been super excited about it. I've been waiting to see it. I actually knew for quite a long time that it was going to be inspired by the 365 GTB4. I was expecting this design around the front, and I was expecting almost a side that might wrap around a little bit more, like how the older cars back then in the late 60s and the 70s did as well. So almost a little bit surprised that it's clearly an evolution. It's clearly an evolution of the car that came before, right? It's clearly an evolution of the 812, but incorporating new tech. You have the ABS Evo system from the 296. You have all sorts of clever magickery that's happening behind the scenes. But yeah, today we have had a very special opportunity to come here, as I said, after hours, after the end of the day at Goodwood Festival of Speed, to come and take a look and to introduce you to a future addition to the garage. It's happening. It's happening. I know a lot of you guessed and thought that this was going to be one of the cars that I was going to be revealing and announcing, but it is certainly the case. Bring it on. The Ferrari Dodici Cylindri is becoming a Shmeemobile. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. Thank you for being involved in everything up to this point. But let's wrap it up from there and make sure to stay tuned, because believe me, we've got a lot of cool stuff to come from that piece of tarmac out there here at the Goodwood Festival of Speed hill climb. That's it for now though. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you again for your support. I will see you again very soon. Cheers.